Hi, I'm Peggy Farren, and we are live with the Understand Photography show where we talk about travel and nature photography. Welcome to episode 9. Today we're gonna talk about Lightroom, and my special guest is Joe Fitzpatrick. You can check out previous episodes of our show and the show notes on the understandphotography.com website. And while you're there, click on the training tab and check out the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography. That's our signature course. I started teaching that class when I first started teaching. It's evolved over the 7 years I've been teaching. So it's been, tweaked and perfected, and so it's a really, really good class. We brought it online about 3.5 years ago, and I teach it live. So I'm actually teaching live using GoToMeeting. The first class is all about shooting in manual, and we really, really simplify it. Within the 2-hour class, you're going to be shooting in the manual setting, and you're going to understand it. For a long time, I was shooting in manual, but I was memorizing settings because I just didn't really get it. You're going to get it after this class. Second class is composition. Third class is all about lighting. We talk about natural light, reflectors, flash, and even off-camera flash. And the fourth class is what I say the techie stuff, and it's drive modes and metering modes and focus modes and things like that. But you're ready for it then because there's a lot of support. It's a great class, and it starts this coming Tuesday, November 8th. So on the understandphotography.com site, just click on the training tab and you'll see more about it. And while you're on the website, check out our trips. We've got 3 trips coming up this season. First one is the Everglades. Of course, most of you know we live here in Naples, Florida. So I was out in the Everglades all day yesterday. It's awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Was it yesterday or the day before? Day before. Anyway, that's in January. In February, we have a ladies-only trip to Mount Dora, Florida, it's ladies only because it's a girly town. It's all these old Victorian buildings. It's so cute, and there's a chain of lakes that we rent a boat. It's lots of fun. And in May, we go to St. Augustine. So today we're going to talk about Lightroom. Now, when Lightroom came out, I resisted it a lot. I tried it, and I didn't like it. So I just said, I'm happy with it. I was using the Canon digital DPP, I forgot what DPP
Photo Professional.
Digital Photo Professional. That's what I was using. I was happy with it. It's great software if you're a Canon user. But of course, all the Nikon people didn't have something like that. So Lightroom. And then Lightroom took over, and I was forced to learn it, but I had a lot of trouble. So fortunately, I met Joe Fitzpatrick in the nick of time. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Peggy.
Joe is currently the statewide president, the president of the statewide group, Florida Camera Club Council. So pretty much everybody in Florida knows Joe. I think he's held board positions in all the local camera clubs as well. And he is our lead instructor here at Understand Photography. He's the guy who goes out in the Everglades and finds the cool spots to get the pictures of birds and landscapes and things like that. But he's also the leading Lightroom expert in this area. So, Lightroom. So say that we have people watching this show who have never even heard of Lightroom. What is Lightroom?
Okay, Lightroom is a digital asset management tool. I know that sounds like a mouthful. What that means is it allows you to organize, track, edit, and publish your images all from one program. It is fantastic the way it works.
And so how much does it cost?
Well, Lightroom comes in a couple different versions. It comes in a box version that you could download or buy outright, and that runs $150, give or take. Okay. Sometimes it's a little cheaper around Black Friday, which is coming up. So that's a great idea there. It also comes in what they call the Lightroom CC version, which is a combination of Lightroom and Photoshop that you buy you rent from Adobe for $10 a month. And that allows you, the nice thing about that is it gives you constant updates. You're not waiting a month, a year, or 2 years for the next version to come up. You're getting the version, as each new thing as they develop it, they put it in the software, which is nice because if you recall, when you get a new version of Lightroom or Photoshop, you had this gigantic learning curve. Yeah. You had to learn all these new tools. Well, now the tools are dripped out one at a time, So you have more chance to develop and use each tool. It's very convenient for you.
Yeah, it
So,
is. And $10 a month
$10
seems
a month
easy.
It seems easy.
I know it costs more in the long run.
Well, you know, it does and it doesn't. If you were the type of person that were buying every release of Lightroom when it came out and upgrading every version of Photoshop when you come out, this is actually cheaper. If you were the type of person that did Lightroom every version and Photoshop every other version, it's kind of a wash.
Okay.
So, but you're getting up-to-date software all the time.
Yeah.
There is something there. I hate the term CC. You know, this creative cloud. It fools a lot of people. Lightroom and Photoshop, they're not in the cloud. They're on your computer. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's cloud-based about that is the Lightroom phone at home to see if you paid your $10 a month. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that has to do with the cloud. Now, as part of the subscription, you do get free web space on their servers and things like this, but you don't need them necessarily. So everything you need about Lightroom and Photoshop, for that matter, is on your computer. You can disconnect from the internet for a month or two, and you can use the program without issues.
That's a good point, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to be on the internet," and it's like, no, you don't have to be on the internet. Just to download it, that's it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And also support comes with it, right?
Well, that's another great thing. When you had the old standalone version or something like that, after the first, whatever it was, 90 days or a year, you were paying for support, and support was not cheap.
Yeah.
Now with this Creative Cloud, since essentially you're buying it every month, you're always a new user, you're entitled to 24/7 support.
Is it 24/7?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I could call them up at 2 o'clock
You
in the
can
morning
call
and say,
them up at 2 o'clock.
I can't find my pictures.
Well, you know, you do that now.
Yeah. Only I call Joe.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't know, maybe the guy you get at 3 in the morning is not as up to date as the guy that's there in the regular normal hours, you know. So.
Oh, good point. You never know.
You never know. Or maybe he's the genius and they let him on the night shift.
All right, so Lightroom is described as a non-destructive software. What does that mean?
Okay, what that means is there's destructive, obviously, and non-destructive software. With destructive software, when you edit an image, it alters that image. In other words, so when you're done editing, you no longer have the original image. You have one with all this edits and things applied to it.
Like when you edit in Photoshop.
And when you edit in Photoshop,
or Photoshop elements.
Or Photoshop elements, they're destructive. So you're altering the original image.
Okay.
With Lightroom, it doesn't touch the image. What it does is it writes what I call a recipe. It keeps track of everything that you think you've done to the image, when all it's done is Lightroom is tracking this with this recipe file and writing down, okay, you did this, you did that, you did that. And it keeps that in what it calls the catalog.
Okay.
That's a record of every change that you would make to the original image, but it doesn't make them.
Okay.
It just keeps track of what you would do, and it shows you what it would look like if it was done. But it doesn't do anything. Now, when you want to send that image to somebody or publish it or put it on the internet, what it does at that point, it bakes the cake. It takes the image, reads the recipe, and creates a new image, right with all those changes in. So it's really nice that way. You take that new image, and then you can send it to whatever you want, and you can delete it after that if you want. So you just keep the original.
The recipe.
The image you just created.
Okay.
In other words, you publish an image, say, for Facebook or something like that. You send it to Facebook. You can delete it. You don't need to keep it. You don't need all multiple copies on your computer. You don't need to waste that space, because you can always make it again, because you have the original image and you have the recipe in the catalog.
Although, okay, I'm a person who has had a lot of problems with Lightroom, as you know.
Yeah.
And my catalogs get corrupted. So my advice is always, you export those pictures and you don't get rid of them, because that way you have them for sure, because my recipes are gone a lot of the times when for some reason my catalogs are corrupted or gone or whatever. So, okay, so the catalog stores all these recipes. What else does it do? I mean,
Well, the catalog has all the information about the image. It has all the metadata about the image, about when you created it, what camera you used, and all that kind of stuff. It keeps track of whatever edits you have decided to do on the image. It also keeps track of what they call keywords and ratings and things like that, and they're attached to the image and allow you to search for it later.
So when you are importing your pictures into Lightroom, you tag them with different,
exactly.
You type in, you know, wedding, Naples, Florida, Naples Beach Hotel.
Right. And the more the merrier. The more keywords you add, the more specified you can be when you search for an image later.
Okay.
So and you can do this at several steps in the Lightroom import process. You can do them immediately, and then you can go back and you can add additional keywords to an image anytime you want. And there's several ways in Lightroom to do this that are very rapid to do. So you can automate the process to a certain extent. And once you have, the more keywords you have, the easier it is for you to hone down and come back and organize, find an original image. I have about a little over 200,000 images in my main catalog.
Okay.
The catalog I use every day. And occasionally, or a lot of times, I'll need to find images of a specific thing because I'm making a presentation like we are. Monday we're going to Sarasota Camera Club, and I'm doing a landscape presentation there. So I needed things that showed certain points I wanted to make. So I could go in, instead of trying to remember, oh, I think I took a photo 3 years ago of that might work, I could just go in and type in a couple keywords and bingo, I have a bunch of photos I can choose from. When you call me up, hey Joe, we're making a book, you know, we have our book coming out, and I need a picture of an anhinga that you took at Marsh Trail in autumn. Okay, here you go. Nice and simple.
That's amazing.
It's much better than my memory will be, or ever was.
Yeah. And by the way, we do have a book coming out. It's called Florida. We're hoping it will become a series, and we're already preparing for our next book. But our first book is Florida Photo Spots, Naples and Collier County. So we're very, very close to getting it done and published. So we'll let you know, believe me. All right, so tell me, when I first started using Lightroom and I was having all these problems, you solved a lot of my problems just by setting me up to import the pictures correctly. Well, I don't know if correctly is the right word, but to import them so that I could find them again. So I remember one of the things. One of the things you had was in the import, what do you call that, a dialog box?
Yeah.
You said make sure it says, because the default is I don't understand the default by date, and then it gives you like 3 different folders, which is so confusing. So you said put that into one folder.
Exactly.
That solved like half my problems right there. Yeah. So in the import dialog box, what else is important to know to set yourself up for success?
Okay, well, in the import dialog box, you're in the import window and you're importing a photo. So that's where you would make that choice to, your 2 choices there are import into one folder or import by date. If you choose by date, it goes and makes all these subfolders, one for every date that you have, and you can have a real mess there. If you've been on a trip and it's a week, you have folders all over the place. If you say into one folder, it puts the whole ball of them into whatever folder you tell it to put it in. So that's great there. But there's a lot of other things that you want to do before that. When you first buy Lightroom and you get it uploaded on your computer, you want to go in and change a couple things on your preferences and your catalog settings. And that's where some of the major things are. The biggest one would be in the catalog settings. You go in, and I think it's in the file handling. It could be in the general tab. It asks you what to do when Lightroom exits. And the choice they give you is to back up the catalog once a week. Well, as you found out, this catalog is very important, and you should have backups of it so you don't lose everything.
Right.
You have a backup to go back to. So my suggestion is to change that to backing it up every time Lightroom exits.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you do that, maybe you don't want to back it up every time, but what happens when you close Lightroom, a little dialog box will pop up, and it'll ask you, you chose to do that, you chose to back it up, do you want to? Well, if you've just been in there and you haven't done anything, you can tell it no.
Yeah, so you have a choice.
You have a choice,
so you
and
set
you
it
can
up
do that.
To say back up every time, but then it asks you.
And then it asks you, exactly.
Okay.
So and then you have a backup. While we're mentioning that, now it puts these backups in a separate folder, and you can choose where that folder is. You can make that choice right from that same dialog box. The default is to put it in a subfolder or wherever your Lightroom catalog is,
Okay.
which isn't a great place to have it if your computer hard drive crashes.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you have 2 drives, put it on the other drive. And that's where you do it, from that dialog box below where it says back it up every time. It asks you where you want to do it, and you can change that to whatever you want.
Okay, hold on. I want to back up
Okay.
to make sure I understand
Okay,
it.
it might be a little confusing. Yeah.
Okay, so your Lightroom catalog, where is the default for your life? Is there a default where, like if I just install Lightroom on my computer, is there a default where my catalog's going to go?
It's going to put it in your pictures folder.
Okay. So that's where, when I'm doing the recipes, that's where they're being stored.
Exactly.
So when I'm backing it up, I can say, okay, leave the main one in the pictures folder, or wherever it is,
Right.
but make another copy somewhere else.
Exactly.
Ah,
Back it up
I just
to a
learned
different
something.
drive.
I didn't even know that.
Back
I
it up
didn't
to
even
a different
notice that
drive, yeah.
said that.
Now, you're backing it up every time it exits. So you're winding up with a lot of backups.
Oh, yeah.
And they can get fairly decent size, even though they've changed and they compress it now, so they're not as big as they used to. It's not going to automatically delete. There's no option to delete one after so many days or anything.
Oh.
So housekeeping, every once in a while, depending on how big your hard drive is and how ambitious you are, you should go into that folder and delete some of the older backups.
Now, this is just your backup folder, not your main
Your backup,
catalog.
wherever
That's going to write over every time.
Yeah, exactly. But wherever
Okay.
you're storing them backups, you want to go in there every once in a while because it's growing.
Yeah.
You want to go in there and you'll see them and they all have the names there, and you can delete them from there.
And you can see the date, so you
Yeah,
know.
you see the dates on each
Okay.
one, and I'll have by date, so delete everything but maybe the last 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. Okay, so you talked about keywords, but also in Lightroom they have like these little colorful boxes and 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly, yeah. Ratings. From grade school, we're probably always familiar with star ratings. You know, I went to a Catholic grade school with, you got a gold star for everything. Well, the girls got most of the gold stars. We usually got beat, but
Put your hands out for the ruler.
put your hand out for the ruler, right? With the metal edge.
Ooh.
Sisters of St. Joe.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, well, that's the way it is, but not anymore though. So anyway, you can rate your images by stars, which is, I find, very convenient. As the image that are so-so or pretty good or something that's I want to work on right away, and then I can give them a higher rating once I'm finished and have them tuned the way I want. Maybe I'll make them 5 stars at that point. Coming in, I usually rate them 0, 1, or 2 stars. 0 is probably an image I probably won't look at again, but I'm
And when you say coming in, does that mean
importing
the first?
when I first bring them into Lightroom.
You can put stars on them as you're bringing
No,
them in?
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being confusing here.
okay.
You've imported the images and now they're in Lightroom, so you're looking at what they call the library.
Right.
So you're looking at your images and reviewing your images,
Okay.
and that's where you would apply the star ratings to them.
Okay.
Okay. Now you can, again, like everything in Adobe, there's 400 ways to do that. The trick I teach in our class that we give and on our online things is to use the caps lock key. If you can use the numeric keyboard or your number keys 1 through 5, which will give them 1 to 5 stars. But as you go through, if you put your caps lock key on, as you rate each one, it automatically advances to the next image. That way, you can just sit there, and I have my computer has a standard keyboard, so I have a keys on there, so I can just put my right hand on the keys and just dit as I go through the images. And with my left hand, I can mark using the X key ones that I want to delete, and it marks them for deletion, and I can delete them later. So I can just look at the images and go through them very rapidly and decide. That's really great. I shoot a lot of bird photography, yeah. Photos. Anyway, something
Watch
like
out, Artie
something,
Morris, he's
something
shooting
like
bird photographers.
Yeah. Sometimes I want to.
Yeah.
So anyway, you have a million images because you're using. I got my camera; it's taking 7 or 8 frames a second, and
Right.
Well, you're not going to keep all them, and you're looking for the one with the right position of the wings, where you have the perfect wing position. So I can go through, and as I look at them, I can rate them and see what I do it. And with Lightroom, you can clean the deck and get rid of all your side panels and things like that, and just have the images and size them to a point where you can comfortably see them, and then you can just rip through them and see them.
Now, when he's talking about sizing, you're talking about the proof, looking at the proofs, not...
Yeah, looking at... No, I'm talking about looking at the
You're not
size...
talking about resizing your picture.
No, I'm talking about the size of the image I'm looking at on the computer, whether
Right.
I'm looking at them one at a time, or 5, or 10, or 20, or whatever.
Now, I have exactly the same system, probably because you taught me, but, you know, I don't shoot birds, but I do a lot of event photography, so, and weddings and things like that, where we take lots and lots and lots of pictures. So I do the same thing. I have my right hand on the X, because I like to delete as I go, and then, wait, this is my left hand. Left hand on the X, right hand on the number pad, and then to me it's 1, 2, 3, like 1, I number them all. So, you know, 1 is good, 2 needs something, 3 is a maybe, and then X the rest of them.
Yeah.
And so then, boom, it's so fast. As many problems as I've had with it, it's still worth it to learn it and get it going, and it does save. It saves a lot of time, and of course, it helps you get organized once you understand how it works, because it is hard to get your mind around, because the pictures don't actually go into Lightroom when you import them, right?
No. You know, people think that somehow they're going into this catalog or something.
I thought
like
that. I could not understand it. I had a hard time with it.
You're using, when you're importing with Lightroom, you're using Lightroom to move the pictures or copy the pictures from your camera or card onto your hard drive, wherever you specify. And you have great flexibility in that. You can specify anywhere at all you want them in whatever subfolder, name it any way you want. Lightroom doesn't care. It's going to keep track of it no matter what you do with it, so it doesn't care. So you put them where you want using Lightroom. That way Lightroom is aware of where you put them. And that's what it tracks in the catalog, is the location of the file.
Okay.
Okay?
So me, who uses a lot of different hard drives that I plug and unplug, that's supposedly okay. Although I've had a lot of problems with it.
It's supposedly okay. And with a Mac, it's a non-issue, because Mac, the OS X, views each external hard drive or device separately. It can identify the difference and will track them. Windows does sometimes, but not always. You can assign a drive letter to an external drive, and maybe 50–60% of the time it'll track it, and the other time it won't. So sometimes when you plug it back in, it can't find the drive. So you have to force it and say, hey, they're on this drive here, and then it goes, okay, and then it's happy.
Okay. Now, I'm quite familiar with this, but I'm going to ask the question like I don't know. Okay, so I go in, and I'm using an older hard drive. A customer from last year said, you know, can you give me some more pictures? So I plugged the hard drive into the same USB port. I marked my USB ports with nail polish so that this is the port. Do not do not plug it into any other port but this one. Okay, so I plug it into the correct place. And I go into Lightroom, and it shows the thumbnails, but there are question marks on it.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Well, what it's telling you is even when you have the hard drive disconnected or anywhere, you're always seeing those images in Lightroom, but they have that little question mark or exclamation point on them in the upper right hand, and that's telling you that it can't find the original image. It isn't where it should be.
Okay.
Meaning either you moved it or it can't find it or whatever.
Okay.
So what's happening there is when you plug that drive back in, if the exclamation points aren't disappearing, it's telling you that you have a problem there because Windows didn't assign the right drive letter to the drive.
So what
you have to do is you go in, again, in the library view, on the left-hand column where it lists all your folders where they are, you'll see they have the little question marks on them. So you take one of them and you click on it, or right-click on it, and tell it to find the missing folder, and you tell it what drive letter that has now, and it'll immediately bring them all back in.
So the thumbnails are exclamation points, the folders are question marks?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
yeah.
I forgot that.
if memory serves me right.
Okay.
It's been a while since I looked at yours the last time, and I had to do that.
I haven't had that problem for a long
Okay.
time, but
Yeah,
I did have it
The,
many times.
The individual ones are exclamation points because I just helped a client with that this week again.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Joe also does a lot of private instruction, both locally and via the internet. Okay, so what are collections?
Collections are one of the greatest things in Lightroom. They're imaginary folders, basically. I mean, you know, you're familiar with what folders are, and you can put pictures in folders, and you can have a name for the folder, and they exist physically on your hard drive. Well, if you wanted one of the greatest things in Lightroom, they're imaginary folders, basically. I mean, you know, you're familiar with what folders are, and you can put pictures in folders, and you can have a name for the folder, and they exist physically on your hard drive. Well, if you wanted to sort your pictures, let's say you wanted a folder with all your great blue herons in it.
Okay.
And you wanted another one with all your snowy egrets.
Okay.
Okay. And maybe this photo has both in it. Well, you're forced to either put it just in one or the other, or make a second physical copy to put it in the other folder.
Okay.
So now you got twice as many pictures.
Right.
And if you had 3 different birds, then you're going to have 3 times as many pictures. Well, these your collections, like I say, are virtual folders. So what you can do is you can have a folder for egrets, herons, the snowies, and all, and have it in all 3. And all it is it's just a pointer letting Lightroom know where the original photo is. And it's keeping track in the catalog. So you just have one image, but you can have it in any number of collections.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. It's really cool because it allows you to sort better and keep things. A lot of people, the kids and grandkids, they want to have a collection with their kids in it, or a collection with their pets or whatever. Well, a cool thing about Lightroom, they have what's called smart collections, where you set up a criteria. Anytime it has the name Fred in it, because your grandkid's name's Fred, it will automatically,
name for a
whatever, you know, whatever it is, you know. No, the names for grandkids today are getting really strange.
Yeah,
Fred's
right.
Fred's not bad
Tame, that's
by
tame.
today's standards. Okay.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
Okay, so anyway, you can set up the criteria, and anytime an image meets the criteria, it will automatically go in the smart collection. So you don't even have to worry about it. All you have to do is have that as a keyword when you bring it in.
All right, so I get that, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between having a collection and just searching on keywords?
Well, if you have the collection, you have them all together, and you can have specific ones. If I search by a keyword, I can bring up all my herons or all my egrets. But maybe this collection is, and I just had a collection I just used. I'm a member of the Fort Myers Camera Club, one of the local clubs, and we have a competition every 2 weeks. Well, the deadline for the competition is midnight tonight. So I wanted to find the 4 images I wanted to do. So I made a collection called Fort Myers Camera Club and the date. And then as I went through my images, I do this a while back, and as I go through images, I say, oh, that looks like it might be a good one, and I'll put it in the collection. So then when I get down to the deadline, and I always wind up at 11:59, you know, I have a dozen images to choose from, and I can just quickly look at those images and decide which ones I want to submit. So I use a lot of collections temporarily. I have collection for the book. I have a collection for this, the presentation I'm doing Monday, the landscape presentation. I had a collection for that. And then I can put images in as they look like they'll be appropriate for it.
Okay.
So very flexible, these collections. And they're not taking up any room. You can have an image in any number of collections, and you can have any number of collections you want. I mean, you could have 1 million collections if you want it, but who would want to? But it's great.
Okay, so now we're still in the library module.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we've talked about so far has been in the library
Yes.
module, including the import.
Yeah, basically
Dialog.
that's a
yeah, it's a
kind
part
of like
of
a
the
subset
library.
of it.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to talk about the library mode? Because I'm going to switch over to the development mode, but I'm trying to think about.
No, it's just important to do this keywording. I'll talk a minute more about keywording.
Okay.
When I keyword, I do my initial keywording in the import window, and I'll put keywords in there to apply to all or most of the images, because maybe I'm going to get delayed and not get back to put any more keywords on.
Okay.
So if I got 400 pictures of them, and 399 are of a dog, and there's one of a cat, well, if I pull that up later, and I can pretty much figure out that the cat didn't belong there, but at least I have the keyword on most of the images. So I'll put keywords on that are appropriate for all or most of the images when I bring them in. Then as soon as I'm done rating the images, or even before that, I want to put more keywords on them. And I'll use different tools for that allow you to automate it. And that's what you're doing in the library module.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a big thing. The keywords are a huge thing. That's where the power of Lightroom is, this being able to retrieve your photos immediately using all kinds of criteria. It's interesting, you can even retrieve by metadata. We were doing a class, and I needed an example that was taken with a lens wide open, and one that was taken with a lens stopped down. Well, you can actually go in, one of the criteria you can sort by is the metadata. So I could go in and I could sort by the focal length of the lens and the aperture the shot was taken out and bring them up. That's crazy. That's crazy what you can do. Yeah.
Wow, that is really
yeah,
cool.
That's really cool. It's not. Most people are not going to want to do that, but I just find it fascinating that you can.
It is
fascinating.
it's neat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I have any other questions about the library module, because that seems to be where everybody has the trouble, right?
Well, the important thing, where people really have the big problem with people in Lightroom, they're used to rearranging pictures on their hard drive.
Okay.
Yeah, they bring them in and I'll rename this folder, I'll move this folder here, I'll move this folder here. That's where people have their major problem. Once you've moved a folder, Lightroom isn't aware that you moved it.
Unless you move it within Lightroom.
Within Lightroom. So going outside of Lightroom and arranging things behind its back, as it were. I mean, this is your big problem. Lightroom isn't going to know where it is, and it's going to get upset about it, and it's going to make you miserable because you did it. So,
I've been there.
yeah. So you know that's the thing. If in the library module, in that left-hand column where it shows your folder structure, and that's just showing you folders that have images in them. It doesn't show you everything on your drives. It just shows you folders that Lightroom is aware there's images in.
It has, so it just shows you the folders that you imported into Lightroom.
Yes.
Because if they're on your hard drive, they're not going to show up.
No.
Unless you imported them into Lightroom.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so it's just showing you them, and you can take those folders and you can drag them around, you can rename them, you can grab your images from the center of the library, the gallery view, and you can pull them to different folders, drag and drop or anything. Which, in other words, so it's the same thing we should do in Windows Explorer, you can do right there, and it's a lot easier than using Mac Finders to do it.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So that's your big thing. If you do that, you have to say, okay, I'm bringing this photo into Lightroom, and now Lightroom is the only way it's going to be manipulated.
Okay.
That's how it manages your assets, the digital asset management. That's where that comes in. You've got to let it do its work.
And the other thing, that just my advice, that I see a lot of people, they up in the top right-hand corner is where you choose where it goes.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people don't, when you're importing the pictures, make sure you double, triple check that, because I do that often. Sometimes I'm looking, I want to add to a file, so I'll say, oh, you know, I'll go up here and I'll say, okay, drive D, put this in the Everglades folder from 2 days ago, right? Because I forgot, you know, I didn't put all the pictures in there.
Yeah.
Well, then I go when I have a job, like tonight I have a job, and I put the pictures, and I don't look at that because it's usually just set to the drive. It doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
And then I can't find the pictures because they're inside the Everglades folder, which is not where they belong.
Okay.
So that's the main thing. When I'm training my, new people, it's like make sure that goes in the right place.
One thing you can do there, if you scroll down in that right-hand column to where you see the list of folders and all, it will show you a little arrow and be highlighted on which folder you're actually putting them in.
Where is that?
If you go down into where it shows the folders,
on the left-hand side?
On the right-hand side, in the import window.
Okay.
Okay. It shows you the folders down there. It'll actually show you which one it's putting in. If it's a new folder, it'll have a little special thing there showing you're going to create it. But that's the thing, you want to pay attention to that. Now, when you don't pay attention to that, and you get up the next day and you can't find them, as long as you haven't imported any more photos, it's easy to see where they went.
Where'd they go?
Just go back to the
recent.
Just go back to the import window. And it's remembering from the last time you did it. So you can look at it and say, oh, I put them there. Okay, it's going to tell you where they were because it's set up to repeat the mistake you made.
So if you can't remember,
right,
you would if you did the keywords, you could find it. You could
find them by keywords, or if you have the you still have the original card, you haven't deleted them yet, you could find them by the file name. Okay.
Yeah, but my file names, there's probably like IMG1234. There's probably 3,000 of those in my catalog.
Well, it'd pull them all up. But also,
but if you're using, one of the things for me with all my customers, I put the customer name in the keywords.
Okay.
So that if I do that, I can find the pictures because I have done it many times.
And if it's the last thing you imported, it's one of the things you have in the left-hand column there is you have all photos in the catalog, you have all photos, and then you have something else, and then you have previous imports. So to show them there, you could click on them, and then you could look in the metadata on the right-hand side and see what folder it's in.
All right, so let's talk, okay, so that's the library module.
That's the library module.
Now there are several modules, but we're just going to talk about library and the develop module because there's a print module, a book module, what else?
Web.
I don't even know if I've ever been in any of those, but I'm in the library and the develop module for about, my company, there are 5 of us.
Yeah.
So we take 5,000 pictures a week easy. So it's a lot of stuff.
The print module's pretty cool too.
I haven't been in,
Yeah,
we're not going to talk about that.
No, that's pretty cool.
But you know what? Future show.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the editing features in Lightroom. Now, the editing features are all in the develop module? No.
Yeah.
We have some editing. There is editing.
There's in the library module, we didn't talk about it, there's what they call a quick develop panel, which allows you to make basic adjustments, a third of a stop at a time on the image. I never use it. It's just as easy, I think, to switch to the develop module, and then you have not only those controls with sliders that you can operate incrementally, very fine instead of thirds of a stop, and you have 2 or 3 times as many things in there too. So if you're doing any editing, I would rarely do it in the library module, in the quick develop. I would go immediately to the develop module where I have all the tools at hand and a much better interface to use them with.
Now, I have many people say, oh, I never use Photoshop because Lightroom does everything. No, I don't find that to be true. What's your opinion on that?
Well, 2 things, I guess. It depends on how good of a photographer you are, number one, and it depends on what you're doing with your images.
Right.
There's certain things Lightroom does very well. Basic adjustments, anything to do with exposure, tonality, color, white balance, sharpness. It's got a great sharpening tool. Noise. It's got a good noise reduction tool. All those things are great and can be done very easy in Lightroom. When you get into heavy editing, which you might do for portraits, you have a woman and you want to make her lose 20 pounds in 30 years, you're not going to do that in Lightroom. And that's where you're going to want to go to Photoshop or some other third-party software to do that. Those kind of things. If you want to do something creative where you're really altering a picture, alter reality, you would need Photoshop for that. But if it's basic editing, the things we used to do in a darkroom, even the things we did that took years and years of skill and practice to do in a darkroom, you can do in Lightroom.
Okay.
So I find for me, somewhere between 80 and 90% of my editing is done in Lightroom.
Wow.
I mean, and the more you use Lightroom, the less you're going to find you go to Photoshop. Usually the thing is, if the person's very experienced with Photoshop, it's about 50-50. Then all of a sudden they find this thing where they build a layer in Photoshop, and then they apply this adjustment and that adjustment, the other adjustment. They can do with 2 sliders in Lightroom, and they go back. So the longer you use Lightroom, the less you're going to use Photoshop.
See, now for me as a portrait, you know, I specialize
That's
mostly
a
in family
special-
portraits.
yeah.
I do all my, what I call proof editing in Lightroom. And
Yeah.
if I do event photography, 99% of the editing is done in Lightroom because I don't really edit my event photography. Hopefully I shot it right in the camera. But for the family portraits, I do the editing. I call it proof editing in Lightroom. And that could be lightening it up a little bit. The graduated filter is my favorite thing in the world because, you know, if I'm at the beach doing a family portrait, the white sand sometimes overexposes, so I can use that graduated filter to just darken the bottom, and it you know, it feathers into the picture.
White tablecloths.
Yeah. So I do proof editing, and then when the customer chooses the picture they want, I don't even bring it into Lightroom. Everything is done in Photoshop because I don't know if this is true, but skin softening, I don't think Lightroom can do just specifically choose skin and soften it. There are plugins, of course, but any little detail editing, you can't do it. You just can't do the detail stuff in Lightroom. But I love it. Don't get me wrong. You know, and I do most of my editing, but it seems to me like landscape and nature photographers, they're the ones who are saying, I never go into Photoshop anymore. Unless they want to swap out a sky.
For things like that, where if you want to swap things or you want to add features or take major features away, Photoshop is much better at that. I think the thing I use in Photoshop the most is content-aware fill.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I mean, that's a wizard tool because you can get rid of things, I mean, so smoothly. Lightroom has a clone and heal tool, which is kind of where Photoshop was a couple versions ago. Okay, and it works fine for small blemishes and things like that, and you can do a lot with that. But when you get into something big or something complex, the content aware is wizard. So I'll go into that, and I'll go in for some other things. Anytime you would need to use layers where you would want to mask things or select things to delete things, Lightroom doesn't do masking and selection. It does do layers, although most people don't think it does.
Oh yeah? Explain that.
Okay, well this, you know, everybody say, oh, I don't like Lightroom because it doesn't do layers. Well, what are most of your layers? You have a tonality adjustment layer, a color adjustment layer, or a sharpness layer. The adjustment brushes. Every time you use an adjustment brush, it's a different layer.
Oh,
Okay, you take an adjustment brush and you could apply it to the entire image, paint the whole thing, or just parts, okay? And that's a line in your history. And then you get a new brush and you do it. You bring up your graduated filter and you do your graduated filter. That's another one. And you can go back to any of those tools and reactivate them and change them. Isn't that what a layer is?
Wait a minute. I don't know if I believe you. Okay, so if I use my graduated filter, and then I use an adjustment brush just to, let's say, brighten up just the person.
Right.
One person. And then I change my mind and I don't want them. Oh yeah, you're right. I can go back. If I click on the adjustment brush again and click over them.
You click on the edit pin, and which is selecting a hidden layer basically and change it. So yeah, you have layers. As a matter of fact, you have much finer control on the layer.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I never thought
they're
of
there.
that.
I mean, it's, you know, it accomplishes. Is it technically the same thing? I don't think so. Does it accomplish the same thing? Yeah, in some ways even better.
Okay, so do you have a favorite, like a favorite tool? Like mine is the graduated filter.
Well, lately I've been doing a lot with the Radial Filter.
Okay. What does that do?
The Radial Filter is like a graduated filter, only it's you can make it from round to any kind of oval shape you want. And you're either fading in or out of the oval or circle.
So do you use that for what? For
You
like
can use
vignettes?
it, well, you can use it to gradually, if you had something you wanted to emphasize a little bit, well, you could use a Radial Filter to subtly lighten it a little bit.
Okay.
And you'll have a nice fall off, which is very difficult to get if you're painting with an adjustment brush to get that kind of real subtle thing, because you can change how far, what the fall off's like and the shape of it. So you can simulate light falling on things to a certain extent, or shadows and things. Yeah. So I find that's a lot of fun. When that first came out, I looked at it and I said, it's a vignette. You know? And I went, I'll probably never use that. I started playing around with it. What it reminds me is Nik software. And the Nik products, they have what they call control points. And you adjust off a control point, your sharpness and things like this. Well, this is working the same way. It's not as selective as the Nik thing does. Nik is more sophisticated, but this is essentially the same thing. I can take a Radial filter, and just like with the graduated filter, people think of them as just exposure. Well, no, because you're thinking of the old mechanical filter you used.
Right.
Well, you have all the different tools. You can
change the color.
You can change the color, the softness, the sharpness, the clarity, whatever you want with the filter. So I find it very useful.
That's
I can
cool.
gradually fade off in the darkness a little bit and maybe the sharpness a little bit to emphasize certain points of an image I want to.
That's pretty
very
cool.
subtly.
That's pretty cool. Okay, Lightroom synchronized settings.
This is, Lightroom, one of the powers of Lightroom is automation.
Yep.
Automating a Lightroom is what you want to do. Lightroom is set up to make these tedious tasks, just like that rating coming in, it's set up to make any task easier when you have to apply it to multiple images. What you do is you take a single image, let's say you have something, you took this whole series and the white balance is off. Okay. Because you set the wrong white balance. And you're shooting raw, so you still have all the different color there. You just have to find which one. So you take an image, you bring it into the develop module, you correct the white balance, we're talking in this case. Could be anything, could be exposure, whatever you want to correct. So you correct the one image, and then you go back into the library module, and with that one image selected, you then select the other images you want to have the same correction made to. And then you go, and once you've selected the second image, there'll be there's two radio buttons that'll show up in the bottom right-hand corner. One will be, say, sync metadata, the other will say sync settings. So you click on the one that says sync settings, it's going to bring up a dialog box that's going to list every exposure and contrast, and there's 20 or 30 items there. And you check and don't check the ones you want applied. And then you click sync, and bingo, it puts that adjustment on each image.
Okay, so now I never do that way. I do it in the develop module.
Okay.
So you know how you have that strip on the
you're
bottom?
using the strip to do it?
So I fixed the one picture how I want it. I actually just did it today. One of my subcontractors sent in her pictures, and they were all just a little dark. You know, it seemed like I think everybody had a white shirt on, so all their faces were just a little too dark. I wasn't real happy, so I fixed the one picture, and then on the bottom, you know, I hold the shift key down and select to the end, and then hit the sync button in the develop module.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't do it.
It's like everything in Lightroom. I don't think there's a single thing in Lightroom that there isn't multiple ways to do. And whatever one fits your workflow is what you use. There's no right or wrong way to do something in Lightroom. There's the way that works best for you.
Yeah. So what are plugins for Lightroom? And do they cost money? How do you get them?
Okay, well let's make a distinction here, because sometimes it's blurred. Some people talk about plugins and some talk about presets. Okay. And they're not quite the same thing. Okay. Okay? You see all these bundles of presets you can buy. Okay. Okay. all a preset does is take the sliders in the develop module and move them to a predetermined amount. Okay, somebody's figured out that if they move all these sliders here, you get this look.
Okay.
And you might. And then you might not if the picture is different.
Right.
So there's all these presets. They just move sliders. Plugins, on the other token, are separate pieces of software that can do things that Lightroom can't, or do them in a different way than Lightroom does, or better, or something like that. Plugins generally cost money, real money, as opposed to a lot of presets you can buy a set for 10 bucks or 20 bucks. With the plugins, usually a lot of the plugins, the editing plugins, are like the Topaz collection. Each Topaz thing may be $60, $70, $80. I'm not sure what the entire suite goes for these days. The suite is great, by the way. And a great way to buy the suite, usually, you look around Black Friday and sometimes there's a deal.
Okay.
So that's something to look for, too. I don't know why they do that this year, but I've seen them do that before. But those plugins, Topaz has one that's excellent for taking noise out of the image, better than anything else, because it allows you to selectively take it out of highlights and dark areas instead of all at once.
Right.
They have the clarity tool in Lightroom is really cool, but if you crank it up, you start getting funky edges. Okay.
I say never use that clarity tool on people.
Right, but they have, in the Topaz plugins, the way they do it is a little different, and you can crank it up without making the edges funky.
Oh, okay.
So there's different things like that.
Okay, so
yeah.
now
Go ahead. Okay, well, that one costs real money. The other one that used to cost real money was Nick. Nick has a collection of them, too. A couple of years ago, Google got into the cell phone, but Google's been in the get into the cell phone business, and they wanted an app that would edit on a cell phone. And what they did is they looked at the technology Nick had, and they bought the company and created a program called Snapseed, which I think you talked about last week on your show.
Yeah.
Okay. So they took the technology, and that's what they made Snapseed out of. They weren't interested in selling the collection to photographers. It was too little of a business for them. They weren't bothered. So I guess about a year and a half ago, instead of costing hundreds of dollars, it's free. And it's great. Now, they probably will never update it.
Right.
Okay, but it works fine. It works on Windows 10.
I paid $300 for my Nick collection. $300.
So did I.
Oh, you did too?
I paid $300.
And now it's free.
Yeah. And then I got a second one free from Kelby for I forget what.
Oh, for photo walk maybe.
Whatever it was. Yeah. So I had it once. I had to work for it, and once I got it for $300, and now it's free. But that's another big plugin.
And that does some really cool things. Okay, so now, to get to a plugin, what do I do? Okay,
well, usually, in the way most of them work, when you're in either the library or the develop module or whatever, if you right-click on an image, it will bring up a dialog box.
Okay.
And there'll be two choices. There'll be a choice there where it says Edit In. And when you click on that, that's where you would see Photoshop CC if you have it or whatever.
Two choices?
Well, you'll see several choices.
I was going to say, I have like a million choices.
When you click on it, there's Edit In. There's also...
there's a lot of choices when you right-click.
No, when you right-click, one of them is Edit In. The other one is Export To.
Okay.
Okay. Most of your plugins are going to be under Edit In. The exception is most HDR plugins.
Okay.
And they're going to be Export To.
Okay.
So when in the dialog box, when you click on either Edit In or Export To, then another window will open up and it will show you all the different plugins you may have or choices.
So basically, it's basically just taking you out of Lightroom into a different program.
Yeah, but the nice way it does it, now for this stuff here, those programs are all destructive.
Okay.
So what Lightroom does is it creates this copy of the image in a format you've specified, generally a TIFF. It sends it out to that program. That program does its magic. When you save it in that program, it's automatically imported back into Lightroom and set next to your original image.
Okay.
Okay, so you're still using Lightroom to do this. And Lightroom can send out to any program. Anything that's a program that's a standalone, we'll send it out to and it'll come back in. Lightroom keeps track of it.
So a plugin is really just a separate program.
It's a separate program.
It's not really a plugin after all,
no,
is it?
it's a separate program that's integrated into Lightroom, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now what about presets? Talk about presets just a little bit, because we have free presets that we give to people too.
Yeah. Presets are nice, especially if you're just starting out, because they're a way to get a certain look without you having to experiment with all these choices forever trying to figure it out. You can get a feel for it, and it gives you a good starting point to fine-tune. There are presets. The nice thing is you can make your own presets.
And it's easy.
It's easy. All you do is, once you have an image and you have applied whatever adjustments you want to it, at that point, in the Develop module, in the left-hand panel, you go over to where it says Presets, and there's a little plus sign. And you click on that, and a window pops up and says, okay, name it. You name that preset, and then that preset is available to you. Now, the cool thing is, when I bring images in, I always like to give them a little bit of clarity, a little bit of contrast, and some other adjustments. I'll tell it to lens correction, all that things I like to do. I'm going to do that to every image.
Okay.
So once I've created a preset like that in the Develop module, when I'm in the Import window, one of the choices I have is to apply a preset, and I can select that and apply it to the images when I bring them in. So I don't have to do it later.
And I do that too, because I like a little extra contrast in my pictures. So I have my little preset for importing too.
And you can do copyrights when you bring them in too as a preset. Separate thing in the import. You can add digital copyright to your image.
Oh, that doesn't happen automatically.
No.
The copyright, you have to put it in there as a preset. As a preset?
Back in the import window, well, your camera may be putting a copyright on it too.
Okay, but it's not a preset like what we're talking about. It's something that you set up ahead of time.
Yeah,
okay.
It's set up.
All right,
Okay.
Okay, so once you're finished editing, what do you do then? You have to export.
Have a beer, usually.
So what do? You have to export them, right?
Well, I don't have to export them unless I want to do something with them.
Okay, I want to do something.
Okay, if in other words, they'll just sit there and that's fine.
Okay.
So I want to do something with it. So from the library module, which is your jumping off point to anything, okay, I would select the image or images, and down on the bottom left, you have two keys. One says import and the other says export. So I would click on export. That's going to bring up the export dialog box.
Okay.
In the export dialog box, you have multiple choices starting with, you specify where you want the image exported to, what folder, where on the hard drive, whatever. You tell it where it is. Then you have a choice if you wanted to rename the file names to something else. Fred's wedding. Fred just came from being a grandkid. Now he's grown up, and so he's got the Fred's wedding. The Fred from earlier.
Grew up fast.
So he grew up fast. Yeah. So you can change the image name or that, and then where it's really cool, you can size the image for what you want to use it for, and you can size it in pixels if you're going to use it to send to somebody where they're going to look at it on a digital screen, or you can size it so it has the appropriate amount of detail if you're going to send it out to somebody to be printed. So you would size it in dimensions, 8 by 10, 16 by 20, or you would size it in pixels, 1024, whatever, 768, whatever you want it to be. You can make that specification. And you make that right there, and then you can specify how many pixels per inch you want, okay? So you can have that all set so you make an image of the right size. Then you can also apply a watermark to it, like your signature or something. I know you have an avant-garde one you use, and I have one with my signature. You can apply that there. So you can do all these things to it, and then once you're set, you tell it to do it, and it does it. You'll see a progress bar go across, and bingo, there they are.
You know what? I just remembered the main reason that I started using Lightroom was because of that. Because what it does, because I wanted my signature, and I used to have to do, I made a a brush in Photoshop, and I had to do it every time. And you couldn't export it because it wouldn't change the size of the brush per picture.
Yeah.
So some of your pictures would have this huge avant-garde on it, some would have little. So I started using Lightroom just because it resizes the signature
you can set it
every time.
Yeah, there's a choice on there. You click on it to make it proportional. And as the image is resized, the signature gets smaller and bigger. At one time,
I forgot all about that.
At one time, when Lightroom first came out, they were on, I guess, version 1 or 2. And at that time, Lightroom was $300, not $150.
I remember, yeah.
There was another program that was out for a while. It was around $100 to put your signature on proportionally. And of course, they went by the wayside. But that was just $100 just to put your signature on. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, I would too. Save a lot of time.
Yeah.
All right, we're running out of time. Top 10 tips
I'm
for
going to have to
Lightroom.
get some notes for that. Because I probably have a lot more than 10, but let's see. Okay, top 10 tips. Do we get a drum roll or something? Or we count down like that? Or do something like that? Okay, top tip, we've already discussed it. Don't go around Lightroom. Don't do anything outside of Lightroom. You want to move something, exchange it. You want to change the file name, do it from within Lightroom.
Okay.
Period. Number 2, don't jump into editing. Don't just grab your picture and just start making sliders. Look at a photo first. Think about it a little bit. Decide what you want to do. Have a game plan. Do I want to make it brighter? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Then edit. You'll be much better off than if you just jump in. I see too many people, they just jump in and go crazy. Use presets on import. The ones we talked about. Using the imports, using your presets saves you a lot of time. Develop an editing process that you use.
A workflow.
A workflow, exactly. Do it in the same order, what you adjust and this and that. The nice thing about the way Lightroom is laid out in the develop module, the process for most people is exactly the way it's laid out. Top to bottom, you can almost just go by that and you won't go wrong.
Okay.
The HSL control in the develop module. You can use the luminance to adjust your skies and make them really great.
Okay.
Okay, I go into HSL, I choose luminance.
This is in the develop module.
In the develop module, I click on that little selection tool, take it into the image, click on the blue sky, holding the mouse down, and you go up or down and you'll make the sky brighter or darker, and it's really great. It's a fast way to change it. You have to remember, though, that's a global tool, so if you have a lot of blue in the rest of the image, it's going to change that as well.
Okay.
Okay? They have a new thing in the last couple versions of the CC version of Lightroom called dehaze.
Okay.
It's buried down in the effects panel, down where you wouldn't expect it to be. Does a great job at taking haze, atmospheric haze out of pictures. It also kind of works sort of like clarity in a way, but different. So I find sometimes when I'm playing with an image and clarity isn't quite what I want, I try using the dehaze filter, slider, and it gives me a little different look. Use before and after view in the develop module.
Okay.
People have a tendency to overdo. You get into an image, and the more you're in the image, the more you do to it, and you don't realize that it's becoming a cartoon.
Okay.
There's that little before and after you can click on there, and you immediately see them side by side, cropped the same way. It does all the changes, but it makes the crop the same way.
Right.
So you have a better view, and that way you can see, whoa, I'm getting overboard here, okay? So that's
a
an
really
important
good
way.
tip.
Yeah, I mean, people do that.
Yeah.
We all do it. We
Yeah.
all do it. I don't care how you get buried in an image, you don't realize how far out of reality you've become. Let's see what the other one was. The next one, the adjustment brush. You were talking about women's faces. A quick and easy way to soften a woman's face is to use negative clarity. Use just a little bit of it, and you just go over it, and since the adjustment brush, you can change your flow to a percentage, so you can do just a little bit subtly. It's a quick way to add a little softness to a face, where you don't want to get into full editing.
I'm going to just repeat that just in case it wasn't clear.
Okay.
So you're going to be in the development module, you're going to click on the adjustment brush. You're going to brush the skin, And then you're going to take the clarity slider to the negative a little
Correct.
bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. A little bit
And I
to the
have done
negative.
that. I have done that.
And while you're in there and you're working on that same face, and let's assume it's a woman and she has jewelry on, then I'm going to click on New Brush, and I'm going to take the clarity and I'm going to give it a little positive clarity, and I'm going to paint that over the jewelry and maybe the eyes.
To make it pop a little
and make
sharper.
them pop a little bit. It'll make them a little sharper. You can also do it on the lips somewhat. Okay. And you can add a little, sometimes a little exposure, tonality to lips as well.
Okay.
So that's one with there. The letter L key is lights out. And what it does is it dims or darkens everything but the
about
picture.
Lights out.
So cool. When I'm cropping an image, and I'm being serious because it's a competition image or something like that, when I crop it, I'll hit the letter L first, and the screen will go dark. Everything's still active, and you can barely see it there. But it makes, when I'm cropping the image, I don't have anything distracting me. You hit it again, and it goes totally dark except the image. You hit it a third time, and you're back to the regular screen. I love the lights. I love the lights out.
I need to take your class again.
Yeah, I love the lights out. And the last one, I don't think people use Lightroom enough for it. Lightroom is a great tool for making a black and white, making a monochrome image. It's fantastic. But the way you do it is you don't do it up top. You go down to the HSL controls again. And in the HSL control, you have your hue, saturation, luminance, and then the last one is B&W for black and white. When you click on that, it changes the image to black and white. But all the underlying colors are still there. So you can use these sliders in the luminance in the HSL control to darken or lighten a specific color. So you can turn a blue sky anywhere from dead black to pure white.
That's cool.
So you simulate the kind of filters, colored filters we used to use with black and white film, but with infinite control.
Wow.
So it's you make a black and white image. Lightroom is the way to do it, unless you're going to go into some kind of a plug-in. And the free plug-in with Nick, the Silver Effects Pro, is a wizard too.
Amazing, yeah.
So, but I'll tell you what, I've seen pictures where they've done a comparison, and you can do almost as good of a job right in Lightroom.
Wow,
Yeah,
that is
amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
So glad that tip is
Yeah.
enough. That was worth
Yeah.
watching the show for
absolutely.
right there.
Yeah, it's my go-to black and white.
Oh, thank you so much, man. You did
a pleasure.
Ah!
There we go.
Joe Fitzpatrick, he's amazing, and he is our lead instructor here at Understand Photography. If you have any struggles with Lightroom or anything like that, he does do online coaching, and also we have a Facebook group. If you just want to ask some questions, Joe is in there monitoring. I'm in there monitoring. Other people are there to help. So it's facebook.com/groups/Understand Photography, and that's an interactive group where you can ask questions. I got a couple quick commercials. Hunt's Photo and Video, and I think it's Hunt's Photo. Is it HuntsPhotoVideo.com? Is that their website? I should have put that on here. Anyway, they are having their big annual sale this weekend. So go on their website, and you're going to see all kinds of stuff on sales. They're updating it every day. So whatever whenever they run out of something, it goes, and then they put something else. Gary Farber is the owner, and he said email him if you can't find something, and he'll see if he's got it, and he'll put if he's got it on sale. It's Digital Guy Gary at WBHunt.com. Digital Guy Gary at WBHunt.com. And especially if you're looking for a wide range lens, the Tamron 16 to 300 millimeter is on sale right now. So go to the Hunt's website to find that out. Next week's show is about selling your art. Now, a lot of us, a lot of people, they're so excited. They're taking all these fabulous images. They want to sell. They don't know how. I mean, Fine Art America, okay, we can put our stuff on there, but you know what I mean? You got to do a lot of marketing just to get anybody to even notice you're there. So how do you sell your photographs once you've taken these beautiful photographs? Well, I took a class, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago called Art Business Boot Camp. It was a 2-day workshop, and it was put on by Carolyn Edlin and her partner, and it was amazing. I learned so much. I couldn't even believe how little I knew. I thought, well, I know I'm really good at, no, I didn't know anything. Carolyn is she's a dynamo. She is so passionate about selling artwork. And she's going to be my guest next week. So remember, we're always Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern time. And next week, we're going to be actual Easter time instead of daylight time.
Standard
so next
time.
week, we'll be on Eastern Standard Time. Remember, we being Ashley, the fabulous virtual assistant, types up the notes. So the show notes are going to be on the understandphotography.com website. And remember, the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography starts this coming Tuesday. And don't be afraid because it's on the internet. It's a live show. I'm teaching it live. And even if you don't make it to the live show, it's recorded. You can watch it later. And there's tons of support. You can ask me questions. I don't get it. Where's the button to push? Anything you want. It's a good, good class. Because our motto is we simplify the technical. I'm not a technical person. Everything we do at Understand Photography, we try to simplify. So my name is Peggy Farren. Thank you to Joe Fitzpatrick for being on the Understand Photography show, and we will see you next Friday at 4 o'clock.